I still remember the cold December night when my parents gave me 1 hour to pack and leave. Throughout my childhood, their criticism never stopped. Now at 28, I have built a life as a successful software engineer. Yesterday, they showed up at my doorstep homeless after losing everything through bad investments. The moment I closed the door in their faces was both the hardest and easiest decision I have ever made. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from, and if you have ever had to make difficult decisions about toxic family members, hit that subscribe button. My earliest memories contain brief moments of happiness that became increasingly rare as I grew older. My father Gerald was perpetually critical, imposing unrealistic expectations on everything I did. My mother Diana remained emotionally distant, always taking his side regardless of the situation. We lived in a middle-class suburban home in Minnesota, where appearances mattered more than reality. From my elementary school days, academic pressure dominated my life. Anything below an A was considered failure in our household. I still remember the first time they locked me out of the house when I was 10 years old. I had brought home a B+ in math, and my father declared it unacceptable. I spent 3 hours sitting on our front porch in October weather, until my mother finally relented and let me back inside, but not before my father delivered a lecture about disappointment and standards. Those early experiences forced me to become self-sufficient long before most children should need to be. I learned to prepare simple meals, do my own laundry, and essentially parent myself by the time I was 11. Their unpredictable reactions taught me to anticipate problems before they occurred, a hypervigilance that would both help and haunt me later in life. As I entered my teenage years, I started taking on part-time jobs without telling my parents. The local grocery store hired me to stock shelves after school 2 days a week. I told my parents I was attending study groups. Every dollar went into a savings account I had secretly opened with the help of my friend Josh, who had an 18-year-old brother willing to sign as my guardian. I knew someday I might need that money to escape. My parents never noticed my growing independence. My father, Gerald, had started experiencing business troubles with his construction company. Contracts fell through, and employees quit because of his volatile temper. He began drinking more heavily, using me as a convenient target for his frustrations. Nothing I accomplished satisfied him. When I won the regional science fair, he only commented that the first-place trophy looked cheap. My mother Diana had mastered the art of emotional manipulation. Her love came with impossible conditions. She would occasionally show affection when I performed exactly as expected, only to withdraw completely when I failed to meet their standards. I became the designated problem in our family system, the reason for their unhappiness, their disappointment, their arguments. Despite their dismissal of my interests, I developed a passion for computers and coding. Our school computer lab became my sanctuary during lunch periods, and after classes, Mr. Jackson, my computer science teacher, recognized my aptitude and gave me additional projects, even lending me programming books from his personal collection. He was the first adult who seemed to genuinely believe in my potential without demanding perfection. There were occasional good days that gave me false hope things might improve. A rare family dinner without criticism. A birthday where my father remained sober. These moments were cruel in their rarity, making me wonder if I was exaggerating the bad times. Now I recognize those brief periods of normalcy were just enough to keep me emotionally tethered to a toxic situation. By 17, I was secretly preparing college applications. My grades were excellent despite the chaos at home, and Mr. Jackson helped me write application essays during lunch periods. I applied to several state universities with strong computer science programs, hoping for scholarships substantial enough to make attendance possible without parental support. When my acceptance letter to Minnesota State University arrived with a partial scholarship offer, I felt both elated and terrified. The scholarship would cover about 60% of my tuition, but I would need to find a way to pay the remainder plus living expenses. I developed a plan to work part-time while studying, taking a reduced course load if necessary to make it sustainable. I waited for what I thought was the right moment to tell my parents after my father had landed a new contract and seemed temporarily less volatile. Their reaction was worse than I had anticipated. My father turned red with anger, declaring that real men did not need college. He had built his business without a degree and viewed my academic aspirations as a personal insult. My mother said nothing in my defense, staring at her hands folded in her lap. The argument escalated quickly. I tried explaining that computer science offered stable career prospects, but my father dismissed technology as a fad. When I mentioned the scholarship suggesting I had earned recognition for my hard work, he mocked the very idea that academic achievement had any real-world value. When I finally gathered the courage to say I would find a way to attend with or without their support, something in him snapped. He gave me 1 hour to pack whatever I could carry. My mother watched silently as I stuffed clothes into my backpack and duffel bag, grabbing my laptop, the small lockbox containing my savings and a few personal mementos. The whole time, my mind kept calculating how far my saved $267 would stretch in the Minnesota winter. As the front door closed behind me, I felt a confusing mixture of terror and strange relief. Standing on the front lawn where I had played as a child, now forbidden to return, I realized I had been preparing for this moment for years. I loaded my belongings into my old Toyota Corolla, a vehicle I had purchased for $800 from my grocery store earnings, and drove to the Walmart parking lot, where I would spend my first night of freedom. Those first 6 months tested me in ways I could never have anticipated. I worked 3 minimum wage jobs, simultaneously cashiering at a gas station from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., bussing tables at a restaurant from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., and stocking shelves at a 24-hour supermarket for overnight shifts twice weekly. Between shifts, I slept in my car in various parking lots, learning which businesses would not hassle someone trying to rest for a few hours. The Minnesota winter was brutally cold. I developed a system of layering blankets and running the car heater for 10 minutes each hour to prevent freezing without draining my gas tank. I showered at a gym where I had purchased the cheapest possible membership specifically for this purpose. Their locker room became my morning preparation area, where I shaved, brushed my teeth, and changed into clean clothes for work. After a month of this existence, I had saved enough to contribute toward a shared apartment with 4 other people. My room was barely larger than a closet, but it offered a door that closed, and a small window that let in natural light. My roommates were all working similar schedules, so the apartment remained relatively quiet during the day when I needed to sleep between jobs. About 2 months after leaving home, I attempted to reconcile with my parents. I called from a payphone, rehearsing what I would say. My father answered, and his voice immediately hardened when he realized who was calling. When I asked if I could retrieve the rest of my belongings, he informed me he had thrown everything into the trash. The conversation ended with him telling me not to call again, unless I was ready to apologize for my disrespect and ingratitude. I stood in that phone booth for nearly 20 minutes afterward, not crying, just breathing, and accepting that this chapter of my life was truly closed. Working at the coffee shop near campus introduced me to Jessica, a nursing student who became my first real friend in this new life. She noticed I would buy one coffee and nurse it for hours while studying from borrowed textbooks. One evening, she brought me a sandwich at closing time, claiming it would otherwise be thrown out. This small kindness nearly broke me. Later, I learned she had purchased it herself. Jessica occasionally invited me for dinner with her family, who lived locally. Her parents never pressed for details about my situation, but their home became a place where I could occasionally relax and remember what family could be at its best. They taught me that kindness does not always come with conditions. While maintaining my grueling work schedule, I enrolled in community college classes, which were more affordable than the university. I strategically selected courses that would transfer later, focusing on computer science and mathematics. The library became my second home, offering free internet access and a quiet place to study between shifts. I coded late into the night after exhausting workdays, developing small applications just to keep my skills sharp. During my second semester, I created an application that helped students organize study groups and share resources. What began as a personal project gained popularity on campus, and a small tech competition sponsored by a local business provided me with my first seed money, $2,000. That felt like a fortune. With this validation, I reduced my course load to part-time, focusing more energy on entrepreneurship while maintaining enough credits to keep my student status. The startup years were lean and difficult. I rented a tiny office space in a rundown building, sleeping on the floor to save commuting time and housing costs. I survived on ramen noodles and discount groceries, pouring every spare dollar into developing my software. Professor Warren from the computer science department became a crucial mentor, volunteering weekend hours to review my code and suggest improvements. Unlike my parents, he saw potential in my work and encouraged my vision without demanding perfection. My social life was practically non-existent during this period. While classmates attended parties and built college memories, I worked, studied, and coded. I missed the typical young adult experiences, but I recognized them as luxuries I simply could not afford. Every decision I made was filtered through one question: will this bring me closer to stability? The breakthrough came when I was 22. My application had evolved into a comprehensive platform for educational resource sharing, gaining attention beyond our local campus. A larger tech company approached me about purchasing the software. After tough negotiations with help from a pro bono lawyer Professor Warren connected me with, I agreed to sell for a sum that changed everything. While not making me wealthy, it provided enough financial security to complete my education without constant fear of homelessness. The sale included a job offer as a junior software engineer. I completed my degree while working full-time, gradually advancing through positions with increasing responsibility. At 24, I relocated to Seattle for better opportunities in the tech industry, leaving behind the state where my parents still lived. In Seattle, I was able to purchase a modest but comfortable condo in a decent neighborhood. For the first time, I owned a space that felt truly secure, where no one could suddenly evict me. I built an emergency fund, then began making careful investments with guidance from a financial advisor. I remained frugal, the habits of poverty difficult to break, even as my bank account grew. Through these years, I had no contact with my parents. Occasionally, mutual acquaintances from my hometown would mention them in passing. I learned my father had lost several major contracts due to missed deadlines and quality issues. Their social standing in the community had diminished as his business problems became more public. I absorbed this information without comment, neither gloating nor expressing concern. At 26, I finally began therapy, recognizing that my hypervigilance and difficulty trusting others stemmed from my childhood experiences. My therapist helped me understand that my success had come at an emotional cost. While I had physically escaped my toxic home environment, I still carried its effects in my approach to relationships and self-worth. Through therapy, I developed healthier friendships and eventually began dating with greater emotional openness. I built a chosen family of supportive people who accepted me without demanding perfection. Jessica remained a close friend, despite the distance, visiting Seattle twice yearly. Professor Warren and I maintained contact through email and video calls, his mentorship evolving into a friendship based on mutual respect. Last month at 28, my carefully constructed new life collided unexpectedly with my past. The doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon as I was preparing lunch. Through the peephole, I saw two people I barely recognized at first. My parents had aged dramatically in the decade since I had last seen them. My father looked smaller somehow, his formerly imposing presence diminished. My mother appeared frail, her hair completely gray, her posture stooped. Opening that door felt like stepping backward in time. My body instantly responded with physical anxiety, a tightness in my chest and dryness in my mouth that transported me immediately back to childhood vigilance. They looked simultaneously like strangers and the most familiar people in the world. My father had lost weight. The aggressive confidence that once defined him now replaced with a desperate energy. My mother clutched her purse with white knuckles, her eyes darting around, as though seeking escape routes. For a moment, compassion flickered within me as I observed their obvious distress. Then my father spoke, and the familiarity of his tone, even in attempted humility, triggered an instinctive emotional withdrawal. He offered what passed for an apology in his mind, saying, "I know we had our disagreements in the past, but family should help family in times of need." The carefully constructed phrasing acknowledged no specific wrongdoing, accepted no responsibility for abandoning me at 18. It was clearly rehearsed, a performance designed to achieve a specific outcome rather than express genuine remorse. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, adding, "We never thought it would come to this. The economy, your father lost everything through some bad investments. The bank took the house last month. As they explained their financial collapse, I invited them into my living room, a decision that surprised even me. Perhaps I needed to fully understand the situation, or maybe some part of me still sought their approval, impressed by my evident success. They sat awkwardly on my sofa, noticeably failing to comment on my home or ask a single question about my life during the past decade. Instead, my father glanced around the room with barely concealed calculation, assessing the value of what I owned. When he finally referenced my apparent success, he said, "Looks like you got lucky in the computer business. That old hobby of yours paid off after all." The dismissal of my years of struggle and hard work as mere luck was so characteristic that I almost laughed. My mother nodded along, adding, "We always knew you were smart," before immediately returning to their problems. They outlined their situation with increasing desperation. After my father lost several major contracts, he had invested their savings in what turned out to be a fraudulent real estate scheme. The IRS had placed liens on anything of value they still owned. They were currently staying in a motel with funds rapidly depleting. Then came the request presented as an obvious solution. "We just need a place to stay for a while until we get back on our feet. We could take that spare bedroom we noticed. You would barely know we are here." The proposal triggered an instant flashback to my weeks of homelessness, sleeping in a freezing car, no one offering me shelter or support. I remembered the hunger, the constant fatigue, the humiliation of washing in public restrooms. These memories collided with the reality of the two people sitting before me, people who had actively caused that suffering, and never once reached out during my hardest times. When I remained silent processing this request, my mother employed her familiar guilt tactics. "After everything we did for you, raising you, putting a roof over your head for 18 years. Parents sacrifice everything for their children. Now we need help for once." I attempted to calmly explain my perspective. The years of emotional abuse, the abandonment, the struggles I had endured. I mentioned sleeping in my car, working multiple jobs, the depression and anxiety I still managed. My father interrupted repeatedly, dismissing my experiences as exaggerations, as though my memories were up for debate. "You always were oversensitive," he said with the same dismissive tone I remembered from childhood. "We gave you discipline and structure. Not our fault if you took that as criticism. Look at you now, successful because we pushed you." As the conversation continued, it became increasingly evident they had not changed. They accepted no responsibility for past actions, showed no genuine interest in who I had become, and felt entitled to my resources simply through biological connection. When I mentioned possibly helping them find social services or providing one-time financial assistance for temporary housing, my father became instantly indignant. "We do not want charity," he snapped. "We are your parents. This is what family does, they take care of each other." The irony of this statement hung in the air between us. I felt a strange clarity settling over me. The anxiety that had gripped me since opening the door began to recede, replaced by a calm certainty. These people were not entitled to my home, my resources, or my emotional energy, simply because we shared DNA. "I need you to leave now," I said quietly. My father immediately shifted to anger, his face reddening in the way I remembered from childhood confrontations. "Ungrateful after everything we did for you. This is how you repay your parents." My mother collapsed into dramatic sobs, sliding from the sofa to her knees on my living room floor. "I cannot believe you would turn your back on your own mother." I remained standing by the door, holding it open. "I can give you the number for some housing resources, or I can call you a ride back to your motel. Those are the options I am offering right now." My father pulled my mother roughly to her feet, his voice rising, as he unleashed the verbal abuse so familiar from my childhood. "You think you are better than us now with your fancy job and condo. You were nothing when you left our house, and you would still be nothing without the opportunities we gave you." I breathed deeply, maintaining eye contact. "Please leave now." As they finally exited, my father turned back with a final attempt at manipulation. "You will regret this. Blood is blood. One day you will need family, and there will be no one there for you." I closed the door gently, but firmly, then leaned against it, listening to their receding footsteps. The apartment felt simultaneously empty and full, resonating with unspoken words and decisions finally made manifest. I sank to the floor and allowed myself to feel everything: the grief for the parents, I never truly had the anger at their continued manipulation, and ultimately the relief of maintaining the boundaries necessary for my well-being. In the weeks following that encounter, I processed a complex mixture of emotions. My therapist helped me work through the guilt that occasionally surfaced, despite my certainty about the decision. We discussed how societal expectations about family obligations can conflict with personal well-being, and how maintaining boundaries with toxic people is an act of self-preservation rather than cruelty. My chosen family proved invaluable during this time. Jessica, now a practicing nurse in Portland, called daily for the first week, after I told her about my parents' visit. She validated my decision with the perspective of someone who had witnessed my struggle firsthand. "You gave yourself the protection they should have provided," she told me during one conversation. "You do not owe them your stability after they actively undermined it." Professor Warren, now retired but still a mentor, shared his wisdom as well. "Family obligations require reciprocity to be meaningful," he said. "You cannot heal a relationship where only one person acknowledges the damage." Despite my conviction that allowing my parents into my home would have been destructive for my mental health, I researched local homelessness resources. I anonymously arranged for a 3-month stay at a transitional housing program, providing the funding without attaching my name. Through indirect channels, I learned they had refused the assistance upon discovering I was the source, apparently preferring continued hardship over accepting help on terms other than their own. This rejection confirmed what I had sensed during our encounter. Their interest was not simply in having their basic needs met, but in regaining control over me and my resources. The housing assistance offered independence and dignity without the opportunity to reestablish unhealthy dynamics. Their refusal revealed priorities that had nothing to do with genuine need. This realization helped me solidify my understanding of family as defined by actions rather than blood. The people who had consistently shown up for me offered support without conditions, celebrated my successes without resentment. Those were my true family. Jessica and her parents, who fed me when I was struggling. Professor Warren, who believed in my potential. My therapist, who helped me untangle my past. My colleagues, who became friends. My girlfriend Laura, who understood my history without judgment. I began channeling my experience into meaningful action. I established a small scholarship fund at my former community college, specifically for students who lacked family financial support. The Antonio Rodriguez Independent Student Scholarship provided not just tuition assistance, but connected recipients with mentoring and resources about financial literacy, housing, and emotional well-being. Through this program, I began mentoring young people from backgrounds similar to mine. I shared practical knowledge about navigating education without family support, building credit, securing housing, and developing professional networks. More importantly, I provided living proof that family difficulties need not determine future outcomes. This work helped me recognize that genuine assistance requires accountability and respect for autonomy. When I supported these students, I did so with clear parameters and expectations, never creating dependencies that undermined their growth. I saw how this approach contrasted sharply with my parents' manipulation, which had always sought to create obligation rather than opportunity. The scholarship program also connected me with other professionals who had overcome similar challenges. Through these relationships, I gained perspective on how common family estrangement actually is, despite remaining somewhat taboo in public discussion. Many successful individuals maintained boundaries with toxic family members while building meaningful lives and contributing to their communities. As months passed, I occasionally experienced doubts about my decision, particularly during holidays or when encountering happy families in public spaces. Laura helped me navigate these moments, acknowledging the legitimate grief for the family relationship I never had, while affirming the necessity of protecting what I had built. I came to understand that forgiveness does not require reconciliation. I could release anger toward my parents without exposing myself to continued harm. This distinction proved liberating, allowing me to wish them well from a distance, while maintaining the boundaries essential for my well-being. The most significant growth came in recognizing that I was not responsible for my parents' choices, neither in the past nor the present. They had options beyond showing up at my door demanding housing. They could seek employment access, social services, rebuild relationships with other family members, or develop new skills. Their unwillingness to pursue these alternatives reflected continued patterns of entitlement and dependency that had characterized our relationship from my earliest memories. Freedom came with this understanding. I could build meaningful connections with my girlfriend Laura, who understood my history without using it to define me. I could pursue professional growth without the constant fear of failure that had driven me in earlier years. I could enjoy simple pleasures without guilt, knowing I had earned my stability through perseverance rather than luck or privilege. Looking toward the future, I no longer define myself by what I survived, but by what I am building. My relationship with Laura has deepened into discussions of marriage and family. My professional work has shifted toward creating technologies that increase educational access. My mentoring relationships continue to remind me that breaking cycles of dysfunction creates ripple effects beyond individual lives. The bittersweet reality remains that some relationships cannot be saved. Not every story has a reconciliation. Sometimes the healthiest outcome involves maintaining distance from those who cannot or will not acknowledge the damage they have caused. This truth contradicts many cultural narratives about family, but represents an essential boundary for many who have experienced toxicity in their closest relationships. I have found strength in making difficult but necessary choices for my well-being. By protecting the life I fought to build, I honor not just my past struggles, but my future potential. In sharing this story, I hope others facing similar decisions might recognize that family obligation is not absolute, and that sometimes the most compassionate choice for ourselves, and ultimately for all involved, is to close a door that should remain closed. What difficult family decisions have you had to make for your own well-being? Let me know in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more perspectives on navigating complex family dynamics. Share this video with someone who might need permission to prioritize their own mental health in difficult relationships. Thank you for listening, and remember that your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it.